I, Burt Lancaster. The Allied effort in World War II was designed by these three men: Winston Churchill, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Joseph Stalin. Within hours of the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, Roosevelt and Churchill announced the support of their countries in the Soviets' fight against Germany. They pledged whatever was needed to defeat Hitler. The big three met twice, at Tehran in 43 and Yalta in 45. While Soviet, American, and British soldiers fought together against the common enemy, the leaders of their countries worked together to end the war and secure the peace for future generations. The culmination of the Allies' joint efforts was the meeting of Soviet and US forces on the Elbe River in Germany. Our story, the Allies.
It was called a summit meeting. That was a new expression in those days. Outwardly, all was smiles and goodwill. But when the cameras left, the problems emerged. There were three absolutely different individuals representing three absolutely different societies. An English aristocrat who'd been a lifelong anti-communist. A well-born American aristocrat who had the common touch. The son of a shoemaker, the leader of the Communist Party. When 1941 began, Nazi Germany bestrode Western Europe with no opponent but England. It seemed at least possible that Germany might dominate the world. Then came Operation Barbarossa, June 22nd, 1941. The aim was Leningrad, Moscow, then the extinction of the Soviet government and the enslavement of the Soviet people. Rose to meet the threat, calling on all to defend the motherland. It became known at once as the Great Patriotic War. Along the front of 1,800 miles, the lands of Russia began to blaze. In London, Winston Churchill told the British they were no longer alone.
At 4 o'clock this morning, Hitler attacked and invaded Russia. All his usual formalities of perfidy were observed with scrupulous technique. Hitler is a monster of wickedness, insatiable in his lust for blood and plunder. Any man or state who fights against Nazism will have our aid. It follows, therefore, that we shall give whatever help we can to Russia and to the Russian people.
Two days later, President Roosevelt announced that the United States would send aid to Russia, though America was still at peace. For many people in 1941, the Soviet Union was unknown. Few considered the facts. The Soviet Union covered 1/6 of the land surface of the Earth, 3 times the size of the United States. At dawn in Leningrad, it was almost evening in Vladivostok. Immensely rich in natural resources, a land of wealth, diversity, and strength, whose people spoke nearly 200 languages. Summer of 1941, a special envoy arrived in Moscow. He was Harry Hopkins, one of President Roosevelt's closest aides. He was Roosevelt's eyes and ears. For the rest of the world, there would be questions about the Soviet Union. Would it collapse? Could it emerge victorious? Hopkins concluded that the Soviet Union was ready for a long, hard fight. A month later, Churchill and Roosevelt met aboard a cruiser off the coast of Newfoundland. The outcome was the Atlantic Charter, which spelled out the ultimate war aims of the Western Allies. Within months, the United States was to enter the war against the Axis powers. In less than a year, the Soviets had accomplished a monumental task: the transfer of their Western industry beyond the Urals into Central Asia and Siberia, and with it, millions of Soviet workers. By the end of 1942, the transplanted factories were in full production. Throughout that brutal year, the full weight of the Nazi war machine pounded the Soviet Union. Some of the first Anglo-American supplies came through the Mideast by way of Iran and then through the mountains into southern Russia. In all, during the war, the United States sent a total of nearly $10 billion worth of aid to the Soviet Union. It represented, according to Soviet figures, about 4% of what the Soviet Union itself produced.